In the early years of the 13th century, when the known world trembled under the hoofbeats of Mongol invasions and great cities flickered like candle flames in the wind, a boy was born along the banks of the Surma River in what is now modern-day Sylhet, in Bengal. His name was Jalal Uddin. And though the world then knew little of that quiet corner of the subcontinent, it would, in time, come to revere the man who would one day be known across empires as Sheikh Jalal Uddin, the philosopher of the eastern frontier. To understand Jalal Uddin, one must first understand the world he inherited. The Indian subcontinent was a land divided by kingdoms and tribes, by faiths and feuds, by the roars of armies and the silence of ascetics. Delhi had recently begun to rise under the Mamluks, while the distant echoes of Baghdad's fading grandeur still haunted scholars' dreams. And far to the east, where the rivers ran emerald and the forests whispered old Vedic songs, Islamic teachings were only beginning to spread. Born to a modest family of Yemeni descent, Jalal's earliest memories were not of palaces or courts, but of fields, rain, and the smell of manuscripts his father kept under lock and key. His father, a man named Yusuf bin Ahmad, had journeyed from Hadramaut years earlier, a Sufi traveler seeking new lands to sow the seeds of knowledge. The boy watched his father preach by lantern light to fishermen and farmers, never raising his voice, but always capturing the silence. It was in this humble home, with its woven reed mats and ink-stained pages, that Jalal learned his first lessons. That God is closer than breath, that truth comes slowly, and that questions are sometimes holier than answers. At the age of 17, Jalal Uddin left Sylhet, barefoot and hungry, with a small bundle of books and a head full of questions. He would walk more than 1,000 miles over the next 10 years, through the plains of Bihar, the courts of Delhi, the shrines of Ajmer and Multan, seeking teachers, sages, and silence. In Delhi, he sat in the lectures of Qutb al-Din Bakhtiyar Kaki, a disciple of the famed Moinuddin Chishti. The city was a cauldron, its markets buzzing with trade, its madrasas alive with debate, and its rulers wary of men who stirred hearts more than swords did. But Jalal kept his head down and his pen busy. One of his early mentors, the philosopher al-Husayni of Lahore, recalled years later, "The boy would listen for hours without a word, and then, when you least expected it, he would ask one question that made the whole room fall quiet." He did not seek fame. He sought clarity. He immersed himself in logic, Arabic grammar, jurisprudence, and Sufi metaphysics. But it was philosophy, particularly the interplay between reason and revelation, that caught fire in his soul. Inspired by Al-Farabi, touched by the method of Al-Ghazali, and intrigued by the boldness of Ibn Rushd, Jalal Uddin began to see himself not as a passive recipient of knowledge, but as a bridge. By his early 30s, Jalal Uddin had returned east, not as a wide-eyed student, but as a rising scholar. And what he brought back with him was something new: a synthesis. He began writing in 3 languages: Arabic for the theologians, Persian for the poets, and Bengali for the people. His most famous treatise, Nur al-Aql wa al-Qalb, The Light of Mind and Heart, argued that divine truth must appeal both to the intellect and to the soul. Faith without reason, he wrote, is like a lantern without oil, and reason without faith is a path that circles but never arrives. He taught in open courtyards, refusing the confines of institutions. His students included farmers, soldiers, and wandering mystics. Many came only to hear his stories, for he had a way of speaking that made even the hardest truths sound like lullabies. In one of his surviving letters, he wrote, "We do not inherit the earth from our teachers. We borrow it from our questions. Let your questions be honest, and they will lead you to God." His ideas were not always welcome. Some Orthodox scholars accused him of corrupting doctrine with foreign philosophy. Others feared his popularity. He was summoned more than once to explain his teachings before stern jurists and skeptical governors. But he never defended himself with anger. He would listen. And then he would ask them a question. Later in life, Sheikh Jalal Uddin withdrew once more, this time not in defeat, but in quiet victory. He settled near the Surma River again, building a simple khanqa where students and wanderers gathered. He farmed his own land, woke before dawn, and wrote until midday. His disciples said he never once raised his voice in anger. He believed in conversation over conquest, in the value of a well-brewed cup of tea, in walking, even when horses were offered. He was known to take long walks by the river, often with a scroll in one hand and a student on the other. To those who asked about the purpose of life, he often replied, "To know God is to know the depth of your own breath. Walk gently, speak truly, and do not mistake silence for absence." When he passed away, some say in the winter of 1295, though others claim he lived well into the 14th century, his funeral was attended by thousands. Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, traders, farmers, poets, judges, and philosophers all stood under the same sky, listening to the same verses he had once recited in hushed tones. He was buried not in a grand tomb, but under a tamarind tree with a single stone marked only with the word Nur. Light. Sheikh Jalal Uddin left behind no empire, no fortress, no dynasty, but he left something rarer: clarity. His writings were copied by hand for generations, passed between mystics and scholars across Bengal, Delhi, and even into Southeast Asia. His thought helped shape the way Islamic scholarship grew in the East, rooted in tradition, but open to inquiry, mystical, but grounded in reason. And more than anything, he modeled a kind of intellectual humility that the world too often forgets. He showed that wisdom is not in how loudly you argue, but in how deeply you understand. That the best teachers are the ones who know how to listen. David McCullough once reminded us that history is not about abstraction, it's about people. Real people with real hopes, real flaws, and real courage. Sheikh Jalal Uddin was such a person. A thinker who walked instead of conquered, who questioned not to defy, but to discover, who blended the richness of faith with the discipline of reason, and who, quietly, steadily, lit a lamp that still burns. In an age where noise often wins, his silence speaks still.